Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Antonio Delgado. He's the current Lieutenant Governor of New York State and also a candidate in the Democratic gubernatorial primary in 2026. Lieutenant Governor, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here with you.
It's pretty. It's not typical to see a lieutenant governor running against a sitting governor. In fact, Hochul was the one, I believe, appointed you at one point when she became governor. Give us a sense of why you made this decision.
Status quo is broken. It's not working for people every single day. Every day New Yorkers are being left behind. And what I have learned is absent bold, decisive, transformational change in this moment, we're not going to be in a position to restore people's confidence in this thing we call democracy. Just as a point of reference, in New York, 1 out of 4 folks are unable to afford basic necessities, basic needs. 1 out of 4, 2 out of 5 households cannot afford basic necessities across the state, whether it's upstate, downstate, urban, rural, doesn't make a difference. People are being left behind. 1 in 5 kids in poverty, half those kids in deep poverty. And oh, by the way, a $254 billion budget right here in New York, third largest economy in the country, if an independent nation, the 9th in the entire world. Meanwhile, the largest wealth inequality gap of any state in the country. So here we are, the great blue state of New York, and we're exacerbating economic inequality, which in my estimation is the poison pill of democracy. So until we actually right-size this and move beyond the old guard, establishment, broken system, machine politicians, we're not going to be able to fix this.
Expand on that notion of wealth inequality, because that's something that we tend to talk about quite a bit around here. How does it end up breaking down democracy and also the sort of the material condition of people?
Well, when I was growing up, so I grew up in Schenectady, working class family. My parents worked for General Electric back when GE had a major presence in upstate New York. I cut coupons, put clothes on layaway, latchkey kid, come home, do my homework, leave it on the counter. I watched my parents work us up into the middle class, and I actually believed, and my parents did too, that I had a better than 50-50 chance of having a better quality of life. That story of upward mobility is essential to any growing sense of confidence in democracy, this idea of equal opportunity for all. Since my generation, I'm Gen X, since my generation, the folks coming up behind us actually are going to do worse off. Right now, the average first-time homeowner age is around 40. 20 years ago, it was 28. The average rent right now is 7 times income. 30, 40 years ago, it was 3 times. So even just the price of admission into opportunity on the part of the generation coming up behind us is too high to engage. And so if you're being priced out of the project of democracy, why even believe in it in the first place, right? Why do you actually decide to hold on to it if it's not giving you anything in return? So there's a sense of economic nihilism that sets in that is pervasive across race, across geography now. And I think it's fundamentally undermining our democratic system. 2/3 of folks right now can't pay, actually living paycheck to paycheck. They literally cannot survive right now beyond what's literally coming into them on a weekly basis in the richest country the world has ever known. And meanwhile, corporations are making more money than they've ever made and paying less in taxes. Those two things shouldn't go together. So yes, it is a profound sense of undermining when it comes to the very essence of what a democracy is meant to do, and that is to not leave communities behind. But in fact, we have government actors on both sides of the aisle right now who are reinforcing economic inequality at the expense of everyday New Yorkers and everyday Americans.
And I think that it was kind of a fatal flaw in the 2024 Harris campaign with the focus on democracy, where it's how are you going to get people to buy into a system that has not been working for them? And there was not requisite acknowledgement of that, which it seems like your campaign is trying to correct. And I found it interesting, you have a different approach to housing, which is arguably the biggest issue for New Yorkers, one of the biggest issues in the country, and you have a difference in strategy than Governor Hochul here, more focused on subsidies. What is your housing proposal for New York State, and how does it differentiate from the current governor?
I appreciate that. The housing crisis is fundamental, and the strategy, and not just here in New York, I argue across, the country with regards to democratic politics, is to leverage the private marketplace, and in particular, big developers with tax credits, with the hopes that they ultimately build affordable housing. And essentially, you outsource all of the state's capacity, both administratively, technically speaking, and you just say, please, private sector, with all your infinite wisdom, devise for us affordable housing, when we know the driving mechanism for those private actors is profit. So here we are trying to work out a public good in partnership with the private sector, but the private sector has all the leverage because the private sector then uses its money to compromise political actors to give them what they want in exchange for what's called affordable housing. Why not build up our own state capacity, leverage the public dollars that we have, and then have statewide programs that give money directly to New Yorkers? So, for example, a statewide rental assistance program. Right now, we have 7 out of 10 New Yorkers who are eligible for HUD rental assistance. And right now, our governor has proposed a $50 million pilot program. I would suggest a $250 million statewide program that lifts up all folks who are in need. Or how about a statewide first-time homeowner grant program, so that all those young families who are being priced out of the economy, priced out of the American dream, can actually have public dollars reinforce them at a time of real critical need. That, to me, is the difference. It's taking public dollars and investing them directly in public goods, as opposed to taking public dollars and hoping through the lens of neoliberalism that the private sector and the free market will somehow work it all out for everybody else. That's just a more sophisticated version of trickle-down economics, if you ask me.
Let's talk about universal health care. What does that mean when the rubber meets the road in the context of A, what you can do in New York State as opposed to on a federal level, and B, what it means relative to the question of affordability? How much healthcare insurance or actual healthcare are you talking about providing versus making it broadly affordable?
I support the New York Health Act, which would create a single payer system right here in New York. The thing that drives me wild, crazy about healthcare is this idea that we're not paying for healthcare. We're paying for insurance. We're paying for companies to basically extract as much profit as they possibly can at our expense. And that is basically the entirety of our system. And the notion that we're going to continue to allow folks to go bankrupt, continue to be denied over and over and over again, continue to have to go through God knows how many obstacles just to appeal a denial is insane, when we are literally in the richest country the world has ever known. And on top of that, one of the richest states. We have the capacity here to actually sustain ourselves, and the cost savings upwards of $60 billion annually once you get beyond the insurance companies' bureaucracy, middlemen, infrastructure, red tape, and of course the profiteering mentality. You get beyond all those components and the savings actually start pouring in. And ultimately, it's a moral question too. Who are we as a nation if we're not prepared to treat healthcare as a genuine human right? So both morally, economically, and I would say even politically now, where we have an actor right now in Washington who is dead set on gutting healthcare, gutting Medicaid, gutting the entire social safety net. New York has a responsibility to lead in this moment. We have the wherewithal. We are the financial capital of the world. We have among the most billionaires, the most millionaires. We have the capacity to lead in this moment and demonstrate for all of America what it means to actually not leave anybody behind.
Give us a sense of how you're going to do this, both as an electoral question, but also in terms of the coalitions, right? I mean, there's big money in New York. New York is a very, very diverse state. You were a congressperson in between the 18th and the 19th, which used to be the old 19th and 20th.
Yes.
that district, the 20th in particular, which is just a little bit north of where you were the congressman, was a very sort of like a pivotal district. Gillibrand served there. Go either way, as we've seen. And at one point, there was like the Congressman Sweeney, who was in the.
Well, let me clarify one thing. So I just want to be clear, just so because I'll make sure the listener knows the district that you're referring to is actually redrawn in 2010.
Yes.
And then I ran in 2000. I ran 8 years later in 2018. When it was drawn in 2010, no Democrat, including Gillibrand, no Democrat had ever won the district as drawn in 2010. It was a 90% white district. It was the 8th most rural congressional seat in the entire country. Obama did win the 19th in 2008. Trump, though, won the district in 2016 by 7 points. And at that point, no Democrat had ever won the district. So when I ran and we flipped that seat, I became the first person of color to represent upstate New York in Congress, the first Democrat to actually represent the district. And then we won it again in 2020 by 12 points. And I outperformed Biden by 10 and won in counties that Trump himself won at the same time in 2020. And so to take your question where I think it's going, we can build a coalition here that is rooted in a populist message that speaks to the economic pain that our small family-owned farms, over 5,000 were in my old district, the 27,000 small businesses on those mom and pop stores across those main streets in those rural areas that I saw decimated both prior to COVID and during COVID, who are being left behind by the concentration of power and monopolies. We have an opportunity to connect that pain to every other New Yorker in the Bronx and Manhattan, to the Teamster truck driver, to the young family or the young mother who's trying to work a job in a factory or somebody's working in a bodega. We have the ability to connect all this economic pain across race and across location in this state in a way that I don't think has happened in a very, very long time. And it's been long, long overdue. And that is how you build a coalition. That's why I was proud to get the endorsement of Citizen Action, a people power grassroots campaign. I don't take corporate PAC money. I take people's resources, the people's desire to want to fight for something deeper than what we currently have. Governor Hochul, she does take corporate PAC money. She's entrenched in corporate power. There's a key distinction here. And I think there's a real appetite for having the kind of candidates in government who can work beyond concentrated corporate power and tie their mission to the people's mission.
Give us a sense of one of the things that may be on the plate of the next governor is working with the potential new mayor in Zohran Mamdani, knock on wood. Give me your perspective towards this, because when Mamdani was first won the primary, and I think maybe prior to that, Hochul seemed to be rather cynical about his opportunity to implement agendas that he's been talking about implementing in the city, which, you know, frankly are not particularly anything that we haven't seen, maybe in Massachusetts or in Georgia. I mean, most of those ideas have all been implemented in one place or another. What's your perspective on the potential of working with Zohran Mamdani?
I endorsed Mamdani within the first 24 hours of his victory. One, he's the Democratic nominee, and I think it speaks volumes that so-called leaders of the Democratic Party wouldn't rally around the Democratic nominee. That speaks to a sort of outdated mindset of risk calculus that I think is way behind the times and not remotely what we need right now in this moment. The fact that governor finally came around to supporting Mamdani months and months later, I think is a testament to the fact of what we're actually building in terms of my campaign and the grassroots movement that is going to continue to put a lot of pressure on her throughout this process. What Mamdani is proposing requires something very important. It requires raising taxes on billionaires. It requires raising taxes on big corporations to fund the programs that he's talking about. The governor may have endorsement 3 months late. She's also, though, refused to say she will raise taxes on billionaires. She will raise taxes on big corporations. And her logic, by the way, is she's afraid that they will move to Palm Beach. Now, last time I checked, the vast majority of folks who are leaving the state of New York make between $30,000 and $60,000 a year because they're being priced out of New York and they're not moving to Palm Beach. So it speaks to who she surrounds herself with, typically the donor class, which is why she's divorced from the reality of everyday New Yorkers. So yes, I'm very excited to work with somebody like Zoran, who understands in this moment that to say you want to address the affordability crisis is not enough. You have to be willing to attack economic inequality if you actually want to address the affordability crisis. You have to be willing to have a desire to say we have to redistribute and reallocate resources in a way that'll lift up all communities. It is not a sustainable endeavor. And the notion that it's a non-starter for her, it speaks volumes, in my opinion.
Lastly, in the event that you become governor, what role does a New York play versus Illinois or a Massachusetts or, California, obviously, fifth largest economy in the world. What role does it play in terms of a national model in your mind?
I think it's a great question to end on, because that's what keeps me up at night is what is New York's role right now? Obviously the goal is to protect New Yorkers and to fight for all New Yorkers, but this is New York. This is long been the state that has been the beacon of hope for the world over. Whether it's our immigrant community, whether it's those who have been fighting the good fight for women's rights with the suffrage movement, the founding of the NAACP, the labor movement, the LGBTQ plus movement, Stonewall. There's so much that this state has historically been a part of when it comes to progress and living up to our democratic ideals. And there's a reason why I think Trump is so aggressively, despite being a New Yorker himself, I think he understands what New York represents to New Yorkers and to the country and to the world. And we are the tip of the spear when it comes to perfecting our union as a nation, in my estimation. We're also the financial capital of the world, right? So we're resourced, we're multicultural, we're the epicenter of tolerance and compassion, of diversity and equity and inclusion. We are the embodiment of everything Trump is trying to tear down. And it is incumbent upon us to have leadership in this moment that is determined to meet the moment. And that is not a political mindset, to be clear. It's not. It's a moral mindset. If you're not willing to think beyond your self-preservation and your political positioning in this moment, then you shouldn't be in the business of public service. Matter of fact, you probably should have never been, but certainly not in this moment, because Trump is beyond politics. He's a chaos agent. He's a morally bankrupt chaos agent that feeds off of our anxieties, off our fears, and does so in a very destructive, but uninhibited, destructive manner. We need uninhibited love, uninhibited compassion, uninhibited truth that has to go beyond your typical left-right divide. That's how I won in upstate New York, won over Trump voters. And that's how we can win this entire state. But I think New York in particular has a moment to lead. And I don't feel it right now. There's a massive void in one of the biggest, most important stages in this country and in the world. So I think we have an opportunity here to really step up and fight and make it clear to folks that New York is here to defend what we've long represented and to make sure we have a future.
And I know that was a great last question, but I'll just add
a little.
Let me add one more because I didn't want to forget this. In speaking about that, do you have plans, if you are elected governor, to support, say, state divestment from the state of Israel? And do you recognize the notion that it is committing genocide, as the United Nations has basically found?
What I have said, and I've said this repeatedly, whether folks want to call it a genocide or not, what's most important to me is we cannot fund it. And I publicly said that we should not be arming the destruction of Gaza. We need a permanent ceasefire. We need to make sure there's humanitarian aid that goes directly into Gaza. And we need to make sure that we do not in any way, shape, or form continue and enable the destruction of innocent lives in Gaza. And so we as Americans have a responsibility, in my estimation, a moral responsibility to make sure that we are not putting ourselves in a position where we are enabling this moral abomination.
Antonio Delgado, where can folks get more information if they want to help your campaign in one form or another? Where should people go? Presumably online, but I guess you probably have offices.
Delgado for New York, Delgado for NY.com. Delgado for New York, Delgado for NY.com. And I will note, since you brought up support, New York has a public matching campaign. First time ever that the state is going to have a statewide elected race where the public will match, the state will match donations 6-1. Any donation between $5 and $250 will get matched 6-1. And we will hopefully I will become the first statewide candidate to qualify for public matching dollars, truly making this a people-powered campaign. That is, to me, most important in this endeavor, to make sure that people understand this is a campaign grounded in the will of the people and not a few.
We're going to link to Delgado for New York at majority.fm. Again, Lieutenant Governor, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.